Hello, hello, hello. It's your girl, Olarike. How are you doing? Today, I am still going to talk about, the use of social media and the impact, that it has on our children, and invariably how it affects the lives of parents, in as much as, they're going out there to bring money home, to pay bills, and to do so many things. We wouldn't want to do anything more to strain our lives or anything more, that would affect, our mental health. So now I'm going to begin by talking about how social media started. I want to believe that social media started from storytelling. That was how it started when we started our creativity, when we started our imagination. And it just started from our mothers or fathers at the time, our grandparents telling us stories. And I want to believe that the reason that they told these stories was just to impact our lives positively. When storytelling started, it was basically about instilling values, in children, instilling knowledge, instilling our creativity. That was how it started. And what were we doing then? Probably tell us bedtime stories, tell stories that their mother or their father or their grandparents had said. So over the years, there's been a repetition of probably telling the same story. And along the line, they told more stories, such that these stories were, made into books that you can read. And I could remember that when I was young, the cartoons that I used to watch back in the day, like even the storybooks that I read, Jack and the Beanstalk, of Cinderella, Snow White, and you would see that all these stories, they actually instill values in children. These are stories that are very captivating, that talks about how, good would overcome evil. And even if you watch Snow White, it's the same thing. If you watch Pinocchio, oh, Pinocchio, if you tell a lie, your nose will grow. So like all the stories, these are very positive stories that, instill values in children. And even as an African girl, I could remember that, there was Tales by Moonlight. These are African stories that are told, and it's basically about, the tortoise and how the tortoise is cunning, a tortoise would betray. These are stories that would actually instill knowledge, it would instill value in children. So for me, I think social media started from storytelling. So now fast forward into social media of today, when a lot of creativity is not tending towards positivity. It's not tending towards, instilling values in children. And that was how it started. To the point that we have allowed, content that are not positive into children's social media. It came softly, and then it graduated to being a giant that we're all trying to kill. And we're finding it so difficult to the point that it has even affected our lives. So what I did is I have taken it upon myself to talk about, social media, the issues that we have with social media today, and probably just talk about the resolution of how we can make social media better for our children. and even for mental health too, as parents, even for the system. So now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is there should be a screening test for all for social media, especially when it concerns children, and even for adults to a point. And I'm going to say this. I think every program that children should watch should pass a screen test. And I think the number one screen test is whatever children program are going to be aired should, number one, it's educative. Number two, instill creativity in children. And number three, it should instill knowledge. As far as I'm concerned, I think if those three boxes are ticked, I think we're getting somewhere. I'm not sure if we're going to have all the problems solved, but I think majority of the issues we are having would be, resolved to a point. Because I think if episodes that children watch, if it is geared towards creativity, and when I mean creativity, it could be culture, it could be values, it could be about religion, about basic things. It could be about science, anything that is creative that is not detrimental, to the growth of our children, to how they think, to their psyche. I think it's important that whatever we are putting out there for our children to view should be screened, and they should pass that litmus test. As far as I'm concerned, one of the issues that I have with, episodes that it show to children, or probably programs that they watch on TV, it should not be geared towards, gothic things. A gothic creativity is not good for the kids. I don't think it's even good for human beings, because like when we talk about kids, we're talking about children that are not developed yet, children that don't really know their, right from wrong. So if we are showing children gothic movies, what does it teach them? Like there's some episodes I watch on TV and they're doing, some things that I feel like it's really gothic, and you see that children are really watching this stuff. I think anything gothic should be avoided when it comes to children's program. And another thing I'm going to talk about is hypnotic episodes or hypnotic programs. These programs where it's like they're squashing things, consistently squashing, or a car is driving through a glass and they keep doing it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. At first you would find it interesting, but I think because of the hypnotic sensation that comes with it, I don't think it's really very good for children. Some people might say it's relaxing. Like if you want to do relaxation, there are other ways of doing it, because children are glued to these things. And when you see, episodes on TV where somebody is just eating and eating like gluttony on food, and they're putting all this, huge, spider-like, delicacies in their mouth, you just wonder what that is for. You're like, what is this? As far as I'm concerned, if you look at it, what is it teaching the children? What creativity is that? None. But for the creators, they are probably making money and they're getting a lot of views. But really, what is it doing for the kids? Nothing. If they could recreate that into something meaningful, I think it would be nice. Any episodes on TV or programs for on TV for children that does not bring knowledge, education, creativity, I think they should be redone, honestly. Because I can remember that, hypnotizing is like when you hypnotize somebody, it's like sometimes if you want to get, the truth from them, if you want to, get information from people, it's like you're literally muting their brains. And they just keep watching and keep watching. What is that? For me, I don't think it is healthy. If there are any other things that you can do, if they can recreate it to make it, more knowledgeable, more creative, and not teaching kids how to gluten and how to just be passive and be just muting their brains. That would be nice for a change. And I'm going to say again, any episode that is indicating rebellion to mothers, rebellion to fathers, rebellion to, parents, rebellion to the system, because there's no point in, making these children an adult so fast. I think there should be a little check on that. I know our children need to learn, but how are we educating them? That is the issue I have with it. How are we gearing the education? So for me, I think all those excesses should be checked. Those are the issues that I have with social media. If they can pass the screen test that I said earlier, I think social media would be more appealing, would be more appropriate for children if they can pass the screen tests that I've discussed earlier, which is, creativity, programs geared towards knowledge, towards education. How do we resolve appropriating social media for children? The resolution that I've scribbled down about social media is this: that episodes should tend towards education, diversity, towards reflection, towards creativity, anything that impacts wisdom in children, biblical teaching, everyday living, anything that is positive. I think that is what social media should be geared towards, to be honest. If we can just fine tune how we create all these programs for children, I think social media would be a better, place for children to just enjoy themselves, learn, and not overly learn, things that would corrupt their minds. For me, I don't think there's any need for children to grow up so fast, to be an adult so soon. There's no need for that. The mindset of children should be geared towards education, creativity, and impacting knowledge in our children. If that litmus test can be passed, I think we are heading somewhere as a society. I'm going to talk about the importance of diversity. When we talk about diversity, we talk about, having people from different races coming together in different parts of the world. So I think, diversity is the theme of the day. And how is it important? Because different races bring different knowledge, they bring different creativity to the table. And I think the fact that people come together into a country, we call that, when a country becomes a melting pot for different races to just come together and, live together and just engage, kind of wobble into each other's, culture and, getting to know them. I know a lot of times we talk about it in colleges. Our everyday life kinds of, teaches us that anyway, because if you go to the mall, you see people from, different parts of the world, just coming together to do literally the same thing or probably different things. Even in our residential homes or residential estates, we still see that we have, people from different races, living together. In workspaces, it's the same thing. But now I want to talk about diversity slash travel. When I think about diversity, I think about travel. I think it's beautiful that we are talking about diversity, that we're encouraging diversity, that a lot of, countries in the world have become a melting pot for different races to come together as one, because it has advantages in so many ways, in education, in sports, in even health, even housing. When you think of housing, you think of creativity. When I think of housing, I think of China. I think of how developed China is, Japan. They are very creative. So in as much as we are thinking of, living together as one, I'm still thinking of, the qualities that different races bring to the table. You will know that some races, they bring, organization, like I would say Europeans bring organization to the table. I think they bring compassion to the table in a way. Africa brings music, we bring love. Indians bring culture, they bring love, they bring their creativity too. There are a lot of values that, different races have. But in a way, I am dissatisfied. And I'm going to tell you why. Because sometimes I think it's not good enough that we talk about races and we have, a lot of, countries in the world being a melting pot for different races. I think we can do better than that. I believe that exchange programs should be encouraged for reasons. And I'm going to talk about the paparazzi here. I think whatever the paparazzi are doing, and they think they are doing things right, they are trying to protect their citizens. They're trying to, paint a picture about other countries as not being good enough. In a way, they think they are helping their citizens. But when you look at it deeply, you would discover that it's actually doing more harm than it's doing good. I'm going to give you an illustration. Imagine if you're a European and all you ever did was to travel from, let's say, Ireland, you go to Spain. From Spain, you go to France and you go to Germany. Because they're all European countries, in a way, their setting is very similar. Children love to explore. So I believe that when the paparazzi begin to paint a picture that is scary to parents and it's also scary to children, that they don't even give, the authentic information, to children, maybe Europe, maybe America, it's actually very detrimental, because you can see the rate of depression these days when a lot of kids are not just happy. Kids are getting more depressed every time, and you just wonder, because it's still the same old. Why would the barrier of, countries be so high such that we can't even cross paths? If the paparazzi are not scaring European kids and American kids to go to Africa, I can bet you if they go to Africa, there will be one or two things that they will bring back home to make Europe better. I'm an African. A lot of Africans have come to Europe and they've gone back to make, Africa better. In a way, in our businesses, and even the way we build our houses, in so many ways. But if you ask, a European kid now, they would have nothing to tell you about what's happening in Africa, in India. They have no flipping idea. They're actually scared of going to other parts of the world. I think it's sad though. Like, be careful what you do, because sometimes what you do to other people, it would come back to haunt you. Because it's preventing our children in Europe, in America, to explore other places, to even enlarge their coast, to even educate themselves about, the culture from other countries, which I think is not good enough. We can do better. Definitely we can. If the paparazzi can stop with the shenanigan, it's doing more harm than it's doing good for, children. Even if children are scared, if parents are scared, the parents could tag along for the first time. There could be a governmental agreement for protection for, children that are crossing over. And when you even think about it, even when it comes to businesses, sometimes I just wonder, because I live in Ireland, I just wonder, like, there are so many businesses that could be done in Africa. I'm like, what are we doing? We have Centra, we have Super Value, we have, a lot of companies in Ireland that produces, body lotions and all that. I'm like, why are they not in Africa? Why are they not having branches everywhere? It doesn't have to be in Europe. Like, I would love if the countries don't cage themselves too much. We need to begin to open up. Let the channels of our blessings open up. Let's open it up. So I think it's beautiful that countries have diverse races, but I think we should still open it up with travel. There should be measures around things. We have professionals that could walk around all this stuff, immigration and all that. So that's what I think about diversity and, travel. If you had diversity with travel, maybe I would say diversity rewritten. I'm going to talk about alignment. Like I've earlier spoken about social media, and I, talked about diversity. At the end of the day, if you want to get things right, alignment is very important. It is one thing to want something. It's another thing for us to do things right. So it's not about what you want, it's about how you do it. Just like I have spoken about, social media and how it started with, storytelling, and how diversity is not good enough if travel is not inclusive like that. So if you want to get a lot of things right, about social media, about diversity. I think alignment is the way to go. Let's start from the scratch. Let's start from the basics. Let's make it organic. Let's make it real. Like if you're talking the talk, we need to walk the walk. And I'm going to tell you why it's important. You know how Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden when God created them and they were naked. They were living happily because they were aligned. Things went all right. They were basking in the glory of God, being in the garden, enjoying the greenery. Not a care in the world. But when they made a mistake, when they missed a step, and the step they missed was, doing what they're not meant to do. I think in a way that, is some sort of misalignment because there is a rule of engagement for everything. So as far as I'm concerned, starting with the basics, starting from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 is the way to go. Not starting with, let's go to 4 or 5. That's how I see alignment. Even in businesses, you have to align first, do things step by step. In workplaces, you have to align in a way. So that's all I'm going to say for today. So I hope you've enjoyed what I have said. I hope that it makes sense to you. That is what I think about the 3 topics that I've spoken about. So if you've enjoyed my content, press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and make a comment. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye.